Hey everyone, how are you? Welcome back. Schwartzberg here. We're learning the Sefer Shomer Emunim, Derush Bitachon. We are up to Perek Daled. Till now we've been learning about believing that Hashem is the Baal HaRotzain. He sends us Shefa directly. No need to believe that our source of livelihood is coming from people in this world. Even though we do need to work in this world, we do need to do lamites malachas, but believe that it's coming from Hashem. And we spoke about in the last Perek how there are three concepts that are very much connected, and that is Emunah, Emes, which is Temimus, simplicity, and Bitachon. Perek Daled, we're going to have to split this up at least into 4 different classes, maybe even 5, maybe even more. As we start, you'll see we're going to get more involved in Kabbalah. We're going to, in the middle of this class, we're going to segue into a few introductions into Kabbalah in order to understand what the Shem Emunim is actually saying. Okay, let's start. V'hinei, lahashrish oischa b'yisroid chazak shahanu telaso. In order to strengthen and to show you how these 3 are really connected, which they are Emunah, Emes, Temimus, and Bitachon, that they are also connected b'derech hapnimi, which means Kabbalistically speaking. I will quote for you from the Sefer Shomer Emunim, which is Rabbi Yaakov Kapil. Asher Goli v'yadua Shabina Habal Shem Tov HaKadosh Zechus Yogan Aleinu V'chol HaKdoshim Shebiyamav Hi'idu Alav Shekol Devar B'ruach HaKodesh Nemru. That the Baal Shem Tov and all the holy people that lived in his generation were made, that the words of Rabbi Yaakov Kapil in the Sefer Shomer Emunim were said B'ruach HaKodesh. And he says here in parentheses, Hagam Shebris Karati L'Kasiv L'Neder Shloi Lichtav Divrei Kabbalah B'zeh Sefer Shaykh L'Kol. Even though I made up Neder not to write any Kabbalah in this Sefer, Ki hamoy naam kisharoyim eze divrei Kabbalah boruchim imenu ba'amram zeh hasefer ein sheikh lehem, because the hamoy naam, once they hear that there's Kabbalah being spoken about, they run away. They say the Sefer is not for them. Avaloy mashim min ha'hechrech, but not something that I need to quote, meaning Kabbalah that I need to quote, that I'm going to write. Because the Yisoid of this Maimer is built on these concepts of Kabbalah. And this is the Lashon of the Sefer Shomer Emunim. Ksiv, David HaMelech writes, Betach b'Hashem, trust in Hashem, Asi Tov, and do good. Shchon Eretz, dwell in the land, Urei Emunah, remain loyal. So you have in this pasuk, you have Bitachon and you have Emunah. You have Emunah. Hine Amru Kol HaMaimin V'Chudesh Alaylam. Anyone that has Emunah that Hashem is one in the world, Arezeh Miktani Amana, he is a person that has a small amount of Emunah. That's the quote. Many have struggled with this line and have came up with Perushim, because if he has Emunah, Hashem is one, why is he small-minded? And Emunah seems to have Emunah. V'gam chalki amar nafshi, and my nefesh will also answer its chelik. It's a play on the words from a pasuk in Tehillim. Ki teida she'emunah ve'bitachon heim shnei dvarim. She'echad tzarech l'chaveroi, ve'ein chaver tzarech l'ai. One needs the next, but the other doesn't need the first one. Ki Emunah ein tzarich le'bitachon, like we've already spoken about this in the last Perek. Aval ha'bitachon le'yiskayim zos Emunah, bitachon cannot exist without Emunah. Ki efshel lahamin al eze melech yisar oisha b'nei adam sheish chelis b'yad l'heitev l'asai, that there's a concept where you do believe that the king or a ruler or any person, that he has or she has the chelis to do good. Aval ein b'teich behem shati b'loi, but you don't have a tach, you don't trust that person will actually do good for you. Because maybe that person's will is not to do good to you. Harei ki yiskayim emunah b'lti bitachon. So emunah can exist without bitachon. Aval bitachon leiskayim b'lti emunah, but bitachon cannot exist without emunah. Ki yevshal leyois b'teich b'shem echad she'etiv lei, because you can't trust in someone that he's going to do good for you. Im le'acher she'yavad lei b'moifish she'esh shechayis le'leitim, unless somebody showed you a sign that this person has the ability to do good to you or to anyone. And calls man that he doesn't believe that this person has the ability to do good, then he won't have bitachon in that person. He won't have trust. So you see that bitachon cannot exist without emunah. Those that believe in Hashem, they have emunah, but they were never chayker. They never went through in their seichel that their seichel should also come to terms with what you shekibel, that you accepted from your father, that accepted from his father. It was passed down. It's blind faith that, of course, you believe in the Bashefer, but you never really thought about it and registered it in your head. You never really thought about the signs that are noticeable in this world that Hashem is the Bashefer, but rather you just have that blind faith. Only what you received from your father. He shall be like a bush ba'arava in the midbar, and he doesn't have trust in Hashem. I've said this because very easily a person will lose this deya of Emunah. But if someone is chayker in his seichel until he sees with signs that Hashem is the Yachad HaKadmon, he is the only one in the world, and Hashem does not have to come on to any creation, any creature in this world, and Hashem alone, from his midah of goodness, gives to the world, then he will have bitachon in Hashem. That is complete emunah with bitachon. And that's what we said earlier from the Sefer Shomer Emunim, that one that has emunah that Hashem is yichud shalaylam, but that's about it. Return leimar emunah gereda, that's like a very cheap emunah. Believe bitachon ima without it bitachon. Hareze ein emunah shalayma, that is not complete emunah v'havim, because again he was not chayker in his seichel to see the mayface, the signs in the world that Hashem is truly able to give to you, and then will come bitachon that you trust that Hashem will give to you. V'hinei. Before we go on, I have here an Oyis Lamed Ches. For those of you that have this new print of the Sefer Shomer Emunim, he brings down on the bottom 6 introductions to Kabbalah and how this 10 Sefiros are categorized, which will help us understand the points he's trying to make in this Perek. I'm not going to read the words inside because many of you might not have the print, but I did put together here a smartboard. This is my smartboard, and we'll go through it. We'll go through the 6 introductions, which are very important, one by one. So the first one is called Seder Hishtalshlus Hailamos, how the world came to be. So you have here, hope you can see, Ritzonei Yisborach. You have the will of Hashem, La'ashpia Lebruav, to be mashpia, to give to his creations in this world. Now, the way Hashem gives is through his Or HaGadol, his great light. And he quotes here a mashal from the Ramak, that you have a person that's living in a house and the sun is beating in and it's way too bright. You can't even see anything in the house. The sun is so bright. So what does he do? He goes and he makes black windows, but it's still too bright. He puts another layer of black windows, another layer, until finally the house is dimmed enough where he can finally enjoy everything in his house. He can see, he can enjoy his surroundings. That's exactly what Hashem did with his Or HaGadol, with his great light. He made 10 Sefiros, 10 spheres, 10 lights, which are known as Levushim. He clothes the Or HaGadol in 10 Sefiros, and that is how he brings down the Shefa to this world. So we know again that the world cannot exist without Hashem. That means that everything in this world cannot exist then without these 10 Sefiros. Everything in the world exists through the 10 spheres. What are the 10 spheres? They are Keser, Chochma, and Bina. According to some, Keser is really beyond the 10 spheres. It's like the crown on top of a person's body. So it's not included in the 10 spheres. And they replace it with Das. So according to some, it's Chochma, Bina, and Das. And these are known as the Moichin. And this we really get into the second introduction here. And that is Moichin and Midos. That the Sefiros are split up into two categories. One is Moichin, which means what's in the head. What's in your person's head is hidden. You don't see it. And that is Keser, Chochma, and Bina. It's Bilti Musag. It's without understanding. You don't have a mustig of Hashem in these areas. And they are Keser, Chochma, and Bina. The next category, and which Keser, Chochma, and Bina lead into, is Chesed, Tiferes, Gevura, Netzach, Choid, Yisoid, Malchus. These are 7 midos. And these are like the rest of it, like what's happening on the body itself. You can see it. The person can see you moving your hand, your face, and they're called midos. And there you can have a musug of why Hashem does what He does and to understand Hashem. That is the second introduction. Just interesting, my chavrusa, Ram Nissen, which a lot of things I quote here on these classes come from him. He told me that Rabbunim Mibishishcha says over on Da Mala Mala Mimcha that Mimcha means that you can know by looking Mimcha from you, you can understand Hashem. And that is, again, the 10 Sefiros, which we'll get more into soon. That is the second introduction. The third introduction is Tiferes and Malchus. So, sticking down to the bottom part here of the Midos, you have Tiferes. Tiferes, as we spoke in an earlier class, is what balances out Chesed and Gvura. And he explains here on the bottom, he says Chesed is like ahava, it's ispashtus, it's like spreading love, it's being mashpia, it's giving. Gevura is yira, it's like symptom, it's limiting. So you can have here a person, right? You can have giving chesed. So giving chesed is a good thing, but if you give chesed to everybody, even to evil people, that's not a good thing. And gevura, which is symptom, which is din, it's good for bad people, but it's not good for good people, for the righteous people. So you need something to be machriya, which is Tiferes. Tiferes balances out. Tiferes is known as rachamim because it balances out. It knows when to do what, when to have chesed and when to have gvura. And he says here that Tiferes, getting back to the board here, Tiferes is koilol these 6 midos, right? It includes itself, chesed, gevura, netzach, choid, and yisoid. Now, as we saw on the board, you have here on the top, you have the moichin, which is mashpia onto the midos. So again, you have the kesef, chachma, bina, and from them, it leads you into its mashpia, gives over, spills over into these 6 here, the chesed, tiferes, gevura, netzach, choid, yisoid. And those 6 lead over into Malchus. Malchus itself does not have its own or and koyach from itself. Rather, it's mekabel from the 6 midos above, which again, the 6 midos above is mekabel from the first three of Kesef Chachma Bina. So it comes out that Tiferes is the mashpia, because again, Tiferes is koil of these 6, and it gives over down to Malchus, and Malchus is the Mekabelas. Malchus receives. Okay, that's the third introduction. Now, the fourth introduction he gives here is, and we touched upon it already, is the Chelik HaMoichin is known as the Emos. In the Sefer Yetzirah is quoted as the Emos. It's like the mother. It's the Makor and the Shirish for the 7 Sefiros below. Right? These 7 midos for the 7 midos below. And he gives a mashal here of like a Rebbe that's teaching to his Talmidim a deep svara. And his Talmidim can't understand such a deep svara. So what does the Rebbe do? The Rebbe simplifies it and says it in a more simple way. But the Rebbe himself, of course, he doesn't need that simple way. He has an understanding of the deep of the deep svara. We'll call it a Unshakable Elyonah. So the Rebbe, which we will call the Moichin, the Kesef Chachma Bina, gives over to the 7 midos below it, which is more of a simpler, more like we said earlier, more of the midos, more on what you can see. That is the end of the fourth introduction. The fifth introduction he says here is that, and I don't think we need the board anymore. The fifth introduction here is that the entire world, anything in the world, whether it's a davar ruchni or it's a davar gashmi, its mekor and its chiyus and its kiyum comes from the Sefiros. Nothing in the world can exist without Hashem, and therefore nothing in the world can exist without the 10 Sefiros, which is coming from Hashem. And he says here, for example, in terms of a davar gashmi, he says, for example, Mayim comes from the sphere of Chesed. Fire, Eish, comes from the sphere of Gura. So to anything else, any other davar gashmi in the world. And the same is with a davar ruchni, a mitzvah of Hashem. Every single mitzvah comes from a sphera. When a person does a mitzvah of chesed, so the chesed is traced and is influenced from this revealed light from that sphera of chesed. And by that person doing chesed, he's now being ma'ored this sphera that it should be revealed to the world. And we know, for example, that Avram symbolized chesed, Yitzchak was gevura, Yaakov was teferes. What does it mean that each one had a certain sphera? It means that they were mamshach and they revealed this light of Hashem to the world. And so to each and every one of us, we can bring a revelation of a certain sphera or spheroids to the world. And he gives an example here. If someone is miskaber on his Yetzer Hara, so now this sphera of Gvura is now nishtalshel v'netzel from this revealed light of the sphere of Gvura, and he brings out that midah to the world now. And he says here, to end off this introduction, this fifth introduction, he says the mitzvah Bitachon, we explained earlier, comes from the sphere of Tiferes. The mitzvah of Emunah is split up into 2 chalakim, into 2 parts. The first part is where we can be chayker, we can understand Hashem, the mitzias of Hashem. That is from the sphere of Malchus. Which again, Malchus is from as we explained here on the board here, Malchus is from the midos. Yesh musag, there's a musag, that's a Emunah Tachtoina. That's a lower type of Emunah. The second type of Emunah is bilti musig, is where you don't understand it. It's lamayla from our saga. Like I wrote here, bina, right? Again, bina is from the top three, which is the meichen, which is hidden in the head. We can't see it. We can't see Hashem. Can't understand it. That is Emunah Elyonah. When whatever we understand, we know that there is more to Hashem. That's a higher level of Emunah. That's the end of the fifth introduction. Again, just to recap very quickly, the fifth introduction, he says that everything in the world, whether it's a davar ruchni, davar gashmi, comes from a sphira. And he ended off that introduction by saying that we know Bitachon is Tiferes. Emunah is split up into two. You have a higher level of Emunah, which is without understanding. That's in the Moichin, that's Bina. And then there's a lower level of Emunah, which is Malchus, which I'll explain soon later on. It's like a melech, it's like a person to a king. You see the king, you can understand what's going on. That is a lower level of Emunah, because it's your Emunah is only based on what you understand of Hashem, even though there's a lot more that we don't understand. Now, in the sixth introduction, he explains that even though in general in the world you can have a person that's learning something, and if he doesn't understand it, he heard it, he doesn't really understand it, it's not so high up there in his mind or connected to him. Whereas if you're learning something and you're listening to something and you understand it and you really got it, it becomes a part of you. It's a lot higher up in your head. That's mitzad ha'adam, mitzad nefesh ha'adam. But if you look into the material, look into the toichen ha'inyan, if you understand something, it's a certain level. But if you're learning something that you realize is so deep, you don't understand it, you know that it's a lot higher of a level. So he says that Emunah, and he's just going back to what he spoke about earlier, and is that Emunah that you can understand, that's like Malchus. It's a lower level. And again, as we see it here on the board here, Malchus is the bottom, all the way on the bottom. Whereas if it's something which is so deep that you don't understand, it's beyond your comprehension, that is from the highest level. That's Bina, that's in the Meichen, that's hidden away, that's Bilti Musag. Okay, that's the end of those 6 introductions. Let's continue back now in the Sefer. Let's continue on. Vihine. Av shamarnu, shabitachon adaf Emunah. Even though we said that Bitachon is bigger than Emunah because you have both now. You have Bitachon and Emunah. Hu legabi didon. And he says here in parentheses, Kimishu beteach bevadei hu maimin. Because someone that has Bitachon for sure is a maimin. Aval amayla hare Emunah lamayla min ha-Bitachon. But really Emunah is a lot bigger than Bitachon. Ki Emunah, which like we explained before, Bina, Emunah Bina, which is the higher level of Emunah, Tiskayim Bilti Bitachon exists without Bitachon, which again Bitachon is Tiferes. Then it's Richala, it doesn't need it. Again, it doesn't need it because Bina is above here. Tiferes comes from Bina, but Bina doesn't need Tiferes. Aval Bitachon, which is Tiferes, Tzarech Emunah Bina, it needs to come on to Emunah, which is coming from Bina. V'lo yiskayim b'zulas, and it cannot exist without it. Ve'evar lecha, and I'll explain to you. Hine, ksiv, it's written, Kavod Elikim, it is the covet of Hashem, haster davar, to conceal a matter. Ukvoid malachim, and it is the covet of the kings, chakar davar, to plumb into something, to reveal it. Ki lamayla b'soid habina, she soid elikim, bina, which he's calling soid elikim, ein lanu hasag lechakira, we don't have any comprehension of understanding it, rak ladas oisoy emunas oimen, rather to know it with emunas oimen. Oimen is like we have in the Megillah, Mordechai and Esther, how he raised Esther, meaning just with like a blind faith from your father, your grandfather, you just go with it. Since we don't have a hasaga, imkain, therefore how can you be chayker? You can't be chayker. That is where you have soid emunah. It's where you don't understand. Aval hachakira mascheles min tferes malchus. Being chaykir into emunah only begins from tferes and malchus. Tichsiv, like it's written in Chumash Devarim, sha'al no inquire, v'goymer, skip some of the words here, lemin hayoim, ever since Hashabor Elokim Adam, that Hashem created Adam. Meaning, when Hashem started that relationship to man, at that point, that's where Sha'al Na comes in. V'havin, v'teferes malchus, nikru malachim. And he explains here on the bottom that Tferes and Malchus are called Malachim because Tferes is from the Bechina of Malka, which is a Melech, which is Mashpia, to the Malchus, which is from the Bechina of Machanusa, which is the Malka, the king being Mashpia, to the Malka, to the queen, Hamakabelas Mana Melech, that receives from the king. Because again, like we spoke earlier, the Sefira of Tferes includes, its koilel, all the 6 midos. And it's mashpia to, right? It's right again. You have Tferes, which includes these 6 midos, and it's mashpia down to the malchus, which again we're calling here the malka, the queen. And from the king and queen, when the queen receives it, that from there finally goes down to the world, to our world. And he ends off here again. The Teferes Malchus Nikru Malachim, I called Malachim again, the king and queen. Malko Machanusa, the king and the queen. V'zeu Kavoid Malachim Chakodavar, and that's what it means, Kavoid Malachim Chakodavar, because only then can you be choker, can you think with your seichel into understanding Hashem. That's a lot lower of a level of Emunah. We're going to stop here. I think that was a lot to swallow, and we will continue in the next class.